Imagine drifting through a sky painted in soft gold, where islands float like fragments of forgotten memories. Below you lies Hyrule, quiet and unmoving, as if the land itself is holding its breath, guarding histories too ancient for daylight. Wherever you are right now, lying in bed, resting your eyes, or letting the night settle gently around you, allow me to take you there. Not the Hyrule of games, but the Hyrule of cycles, spirits, and timeless laws, where every story is a thread in an endless tapestry. If you enjoy these journeys, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell me where you're listening from, what time it is, and the topics you'd love to explore. Your thoughts may guide our next adventure. To understand Hyrule, you must first imagine a world whose foundations were not built by mortal hands, but woven by divinity itself. Long before mountains had weight and rivers knew their course, there were only three lights drifting through primordial darkness: Din, Nehru, and Faroer. They were not goddesses in the way we describe deities today. They were forces, intentions, and laws before laws existed. Din shaped the raw matter of the world, pressing fire and stone into form. Nehru breathed order into the chaos, laying down the principles that would govern gravity, magic, time, and the invisible architecture of fate. And Faroe filled the world with life, souls capable of choice, courage, and the fragile vulnerabilities that make existence meaningful. From their combined effort came the Triforce, an artifact of pure intention, a silent engine that continues to hum at the center of reality. It holds no consciousness and passes no judgment. It only amplifies what already exists within a person: power, wisdom, and courage, three virtues that resonate through every era of Hyrule. When these forces are in balance, the world remains stable. But when one grows too strong or falls into the hands of someone whose heart is tilted toward corruption, the equilibrium shatters, and history must reshape itself around those fractures. Yet the golden goddesses did not remain. They left the world to flourish or decay on its own terms. In their place came Hylia, a guardian spirit who refused to abandon the realm. She watched as darkness stirred in the cracks of creation. When Demise, the primordial demon, rose from the shadows, Hylia fought not as a distant deity, but as a protector who willingly stepped into the battlefield. And later, she made the most intimate choice a goddess can make: to relinquish her divinity, to be reborn as a mortal, and to anchor her spirit within the cycle of human life. Demise in turn forged a legacy of his own, not through creation, but through hatred. His final curse condemned the descendants of Hylia and the spirit of the hero to an endless loop of conflict. Malice, the substance of his rage, would seep into the world again and again, searching for vessels to twist and corrupt. Thus began the triad of reincarnation: Zelda, Link, and the one who would carry Demise's wrath, most often Ganondorf. Born from a Gerudo prophecy, neither he nor his people could escape. Every era of Hyrule, no matter how peaceful or prosperous, is simply another turn in this cosmic cycle. Good rises, evil awakens, and courage responds. Sometimes the victories are decisive, sometimes the losses reshape the land entirely, but the pattern continues, echoing through timelines, legends, and forgotten ruins. At its core, Hyrule is more than a kingdom. It is a metaphor for the way history repeats itself, not because we fail to remember, but because the forces that shape us are older and deeper than memory. Evil never disappears. Good never triumphs completely, and humanity, caught between the two, must continually rediscover what it means to be brave, wise, and strong in a world that is always turning toward another dawn. To step into the true beginning of Hyrule, you must first imagine a realm without shape, a place where time had not yet learned how to move, and light had not yet discovered its own glow. A vast sea of primordial chaos, weightless and silent, drifting in the dark. Nothing existed, not land, not sky, not even the idea of destiny, only a swirling ocean of raw, untamed energy waiting for a sculptor. And then they arrived. 3 radiant forms descended into the void. Din, the flame that gives matter its weight. Nehru, the arc of wisdom that draws borders between order and chaos. And Pharaoh, the quiet pulse of life itself. They were not gods in the human sense. They were principles, universal intentions given shape. Each carried a fragment of purpose, and together they began to weave a world. Din moved first, her arms tracing arcs of fire that cooled into continents. Beneath her touch, mountains rose like sleeping giants, and rivers carved their paths with the confidence of creatures that already knew where they were meant to flow. Her creations were bold, heavy, and real. Nehru followed, her presence a deep blue shimmer that settled over the newborn land. She shaped the laws of existence, gravity that held mountains in place, time that kept the sky moving, magic that connected spirit to matter. She set boundaries. The world would follow even when no one remembered who wrote them. Lastly, Farore's green light spilled across the landscape. From that luminescence formed the first souls, seeds of courage that would one day bloom into creatures, tribes, and civilizations. Life was not placed on the world. It was woven into the fabric of every stone, every river, every tree. And when their work was finished, the 3 goddesses withdrew from the realm they had shaped. But they did not leave it unanchored. At the heart of existence, where their energies intertwined, they left behind the Triforce, a perfect triangle of intention, humming quietly in the dark. Not a weapon, not a blessing, simply the last echo of creation, capable of amplifying the heart of whoever touched it. From this divine silence rose Hylia, the guardian spirit who would watch over the world in their absence. And as the ages unfolded, the land beneath her care continued to shift, reshape, and struggle, echoing the balance the goddesses had tried to maintain. In time, the sky itself would split open, and a fragment of earth would rise above the clouds. Skyloft, the sanctuary Hylia carved out of desperation, became a refuge suspended between worlds. Its floating islands drift like memories too fragile to stay anchored to the surface below. Stone temples rise like silent watchtowers, their columns reaching upward as though trying to touch the hands that once sculpted everything. Below, the surface remains wild and wounded. Its soil bears scars, carved by ancient wars, where malice once seeped through the cracks like rot beneath a scab. Forests grow over ruins of forgotten eras. Mountains shift with each new timeline. Deserts swallow the remains of vanished kingdoms. The land remembers everything, even when the people do not. Here begins the exploration of Hyrule, not as a map, but as a living, breathing myth, shaped by gods, guarded by spirits, and forever walking the line between creation and collapse. To understand Hyrule, you must imagine not a single world, but a river whose waters split into 3 separate paths, each flowing toward a different horizon, yet all born from the same spring. Time in Hyrule is not a straight line. It is a living current, shaped by choices, sacrifices, and moments where destiny bends under its own weight. Long before the splitting, there was an age of foundations, a time when the Zonai walked beside the early Hylians, and the world felt closer to its divine beginnings. The Zonai, with their towering stone architecture and mysterious secret stones, shaped the landscape with a strength that felt almost mythic. The Hylians contributed what the Zonai could not: structure, language, and the beginnings of political order. Together, they built the first kingdom, carving temples of white stone and sanctuaries that seemed to breathe with ancient magic. This was the age when Hyrule was young, whole, and unaware of how fragile unity could be. But the balance did not hold. Destiny twisted when the hero of time opened the doors of fate. By traveling between eras, Link unknowingly placed pressure on the fabric of reality, like a weight set upon a delicate branch, and the branch cracked. The first fracture formed the downfall timeline, a path born from tragedy. Here, Link falls. Ganondorf claims the full Triforce. The sacred realm warps into the dark world, a mirror of Hyrule twisted by malice. Lands rot, skies dim, and ancient forests curl inward, as if trying to hide from the corruption spreading through their roots. This version of Hyrule feels older, heavier, as though the earth itself mourns the fate it could not escape. In another reality, Link returns to his youth, carrying the warnings of a future he refused to allow. This act births the child timeline, where Ganondorf is stopped before his rise to power and cast into the Twilight Realm. Here, Hyrule leans toward order, political, ritualistic, almost ceremonial. Temples become centers of governance. The Temple of Time stands like a spine, holding the kingdom upright. In the shadows between worlds, the Twilight Realm breathes, a reminder that even in a more controlled timeline, darkness is never fully banished, only managed. Then comes the adult timeline, born of absence. When Link departs the future he saved, that world is left without its hero. Ganondorf rises again, unopposed, and the goddesses, seeing no other path, flood the kingdom. The great sea swallows mountains, castles, and fields, leaving only the tallest peaks visible as scattered islands. Civilization survives by adapting, evolving. The Zora, once rulers of rivers and lakes, transform into the Rito, taking to the skies after losing the waters that once sustained them. Hyrule slumbers beneath the waves, a drowned memory preserved in the quiet of the ocean floor. These three timelines do not simply coexist. They represent three reflections of the same world, shaped by a single choice at a single moment. And somewhere between them, legends fade, merge, and return again. In Hyrule, time is not a boundary. It is a story still searching for an ending. To understand Hyrule as a living world, you must picture it not as a single kingdom, but as a tapestry of distinct realms, each one breathing with its own rhythm, its own history, its own memory of the ages. Every region is shaped by the people who call it home, and every people is shaped in turn by the land beneath their feet. As you walk through Hyrule, it feels less like traveling across a country and more like drifting between civilizations layered upon one another like geological time. Begin at the Zora Domain, a sanctuary sculpted from water and translucent stone. The architecture here glimmers like frozen rivers, catching the light in soft blue refractions. Water does not simply surround the domain, it moves through it, threading through bridges and archways, like veins carrying time itself. The Zora live long lives, often spanning centuries, and their city reflects their patience. Towers are built not for defense, but for elegance. Walkways curve the way water chooses its path. You can feel the weight of memory in the way the currents whisper against the stone. To visit the domain is to feel as though the past is not behind you, but flowing quietly beneath your feet. Travel upward to the scorched cliffs of Goron Mountain, and the world changes completely. Here, the air is thick with heat, and the ground trembles with the heartbeat of the volcano. Gorons carve their cities directly into the mountain's body, hollowing great chambers lit by the orange glow of molten rock. Bridges of solid stone stretch across rivers of lava, and spiraling tunnels twist through mineral veins like the roots of a colossal tree. Their society is built on strength, not the violence of conquest, but the strength of community, of brotherhood. Every Goron is welcomed as kin. Their rituals honor endurance, resilience, and the belief that one thrives only when all thrive together. Then the land opens into the endless sands of the Gerudo Desert, where the winds carve sharp lines across stone pillars, rising like lances aimed at the sky. The Gerudo build their cities with layered walls and towering gates to withstand the harshness of their homeland. Their architecture is geometric, bold, precise. This is a society led entirely by women, fierce, disciplined, and elegant. In every century they greet the birth of a single man destined to become their king. Ganondorf, long before he became the vessel of Demise's malice, was one such child, woven into their traditions by fate rather than choice. Far above the sands, the winds carry you to Rito Village, perched upon a tall stone spire that spirals toward the clouds. Homes of carved wood circle the central pillar in sweeping arcs, shaped by the logic of flight rather than the logic of roads. The Rito are a people of air, migratory, musical, and free. Their village feels like a living wind instrument, resonating with the soft rustle of feathers and the hum of distant storms. They are also the evolution of a lost people. When the Great Sea swallowed Hyrule in the adult timeline, the Zora adapted not to the water, but away from it, becoming the sky-bound Rito. And finally, in the quiet corners of the world, you find the marks of the Sheikah, shrines, towers, and shimmering blue lights that feel older than the kingdom itself. Their structures curve like ancient circuitry, elegant and mysterious, blending magic with technology in ways that seem almost prophetic. The eye symbol watches from every surface, calm yet unblinking, as though observing the flow of history from behind a veil only they can lift. These lands and peoples are more than regions on a map. They are the living organs of Hyrule, each one sustaining a different part of its soul. To walk among them is to understand that this world is not one story, but many, woven together across ages, echoing through stone, sand, water, fire, wind, and memory. To walk into the Gryffindor common room is to step into a place that feels warm, even in the coldest winter nights. The air seems to glow from within, carrying the pulse of determination, loyalty, and boldness. Gryffindors are taught, not through lectures, but through culture, that fear is not an enemy, but a companion. They learn to protect the vulnerable, to take action, to step forward even when doubt whispers otherwise. This house has produced countless heroes, not because its students are fearless, but because they learn to walk forward in spite of their fear. The castle seems to brighten around them, as though ignited by their fire. Ravenclaw, by contrast, feels like the quiet turning of a page. The Ravenclaw Tower is filled with an almost ethereal stillness, touched by the faint hum of curiosity. Knowledge here is not a trophy, it is nourishment. Students of this house move through the world with a gentle intensity, constantly analyzing, questioning, rearranging ideas the way their common room rearranges itself to match their collective trains of thought. There is a light near the Eagle Tower that never seems to dim, a soft moonlit glow that reflects the minds housed within. Ravenclaws hold a natural harmony with ancient magic, riddles, and mysteries. It is as though the castle relaxes into clarity whenever they gather. Then there is Hufflepuff, the house many underestimate, but few truly understand. Its common room radiates warmth, like stepping into a hearth-lit kitchen after a long journey. Dubiny's Hufflepuff values inclusion, patience, and quiet strength, virtues that often require more discipline than the flashier talents of other houses. Students who belong to Hufflepuff often become the emotional anchor of Hogwarts, their steady magic smoothing out the turbulence of school life. The castle responds to them with a gentle fondness. Spaces near the Hufflepuff corridors feel safer, calmer, as if the stone itself exhales. Finally, Slytherin, mysterious, deliberate, endlessly misunderstood. Deep below the lake, their common room is a study in shadows and strategy. The students of this house understand ambition not as greed, but as direction, a sharpened sense of self. They are observant, calculating, and capable of perceiving the invisible threads of power that others overlook. The magic surrounding Slytherin is quiet, almost serpentine, curling through stone like a thoughtful whisper. Many mistake their silence for malice, but in truth, Slytherins are simply tuned to a deeper frequency of instinct and caution. The walls near their domain seem to hold their breath, listening. Together, these four houses form the inner constellation of Hogwarts, four philosophies orbiting one another, shaping the rhythm and temperament of the school itself. And as each new generation arrives, the balance shifts slightly, keeping the ancient castle alive, evolving, and quietly learning what it means to nurture every kind of soul. To understand the soul of Hyrule, you must begin with the people who stand at its center, those whose destinies are woven directly into the fabric of the world. These are not merely inhabitants of a kingdom, but the living pillars upon which every era of Hyrule is built. Their stories shape the land as surely as mountains and rivers do, and their lives echo across timelines like recurring refrains in an ancient song. The Hylians, descendants of a goddess. The Hylians are the closest the mortal world has to the divine. Their lineage traces back to Hylia herself, who relinquished godhood to walk among her people. Because of this, Hylians possess a subtle but unmistakable sign of their heritage, pointed ears that seem to hear the world in ways others cannot. Legend says their ears are tuned to the whisper of fate, the murmur of magic, the subtle shifting of time's current. Their role in society reflects this spiritual sensitivity. Hylians become scholars, sages, nobles, and guardians of the kingdom's knowledge. The royal family, in particular, carries the heaviest burden, for their bloodline protects the Triforce of wisdom, a responsibility passed quietly from generation to generation. They are the keepers of records, the interpreters of prophecy, and the silent architects who maintain the fragile order of Hyrule. Zelda, the vessel of divine wisdom. Among the Hylians, one figure shines brighter than all others, Princess Zelda. Across every age, every timeline, and every branching thread of history, a Zelda is born carrying the spirit of Hylia's wisdom. She is not merely a monarch, she is a continuation of a divine intention. With her connection to the Triforce of Wisdom, Zelda sees patterns where others see chaos. She senses approaching calamity long before shadows fall across the land. Her magic is one of light, shielding, sealing, illuminating, but her true power lies in her intuition, her foresight, and her unshakable resolve. In every age, Zelda becomes the heart of Hyrule. Sometimes she leads openly, sometimes she works from behind veils and disguises, but always she is the guiding thread that holds the kingdom together, balancing the forces that threaten to tear reality apart. The hero, an undying spirit reborn through ages. Opposite Zelda stands the hero, but their bond is not one of blood, it is one of purpose. The hero's spirit is timeless, an eternal ember that reignites whenever darkness rises. Link is not a single person, nor a family line. He is a recurring echo of courage itself. He is always born humble. A villager, a child of the forest, a knight in training, a wanderer with no title. His origins remind us of the world's deepest truth. Heroism does not arrive with grandeur, but with choice, and each incarnation of Link bears the courage to make that choice, even when the world seems beyond saving. He is the counterweight to malice, the blade that cuts through the curse of demise. His endurance allows him to face trials meant to break lesser spirits, and his willpower is what anchors Hyrule in moments when all seems lost. 3 pillars, one destiny. Together, the Hylians, Zelda, and the hero form the central triad of Hyrule's story. Wisdom, courage, and the stewardship of power converge around them, creating a balance the world depends on. They do not choose their destinies. Destiny chooses them, and as long as Hyrule exists, their spirits will rise again, carrying the world forward through every age, every fall, and every dawn. As you move deeper into Hyrule, past the familiar kingdoms and gentle plains, you begin to encounter civilizations that feel older, sharper, and more enigmatic cultures, whose identities are carved by harsh landscapes, sacred secrets, and destinies far larger than themselves. These are the peoples who shape the hidden architecture of Hyrule's power, the Gerudo, the Sheikah, and the Lost Zonai. Their histories run deep beneath the surface, like roots twisting in the dark, sustaining the world even when forgotten. The Gerudo, daughters of the desert. In the endless sweep of the Gerudo Desert, the wind sings a fierce, lonely melody. Here, where sandstorms carve the horizon and heat blurs every footprint, rises a fortress city built by a society unlike any other. The Gerudo are a matriarchal people, strong, disciplined, and proud. Their culture is shaped by necessity. The desert rewards resilience and punishes weakness, and so their architecture stands tall and fortified, with high walls that shield them from the merciless sun. For centuries, the Gerudo have lived under a unique biological cycle. Only one male is born every 100 years, and by ancient decree, that single man becomes their king. Whether kind or cruel, wise or misguided, he sits upon the throne by right of birth alone. It is this tradition, so old that no one remembers who wrote it, that opened the door for fate to twist. Ganondorf, long before becoming the vessel of Demise's malice, was one such child, born into expectations he never chose, crowned before he understood what destiny demanded of him. Because of him, many across Hyrule fear the Gerudo, believing they produce evil, a misunderstanding the desert tribe carries like a scar. Ganondorf, the meeting point of power and malice. Ganondorf's story begins not as a demon, but as a prince, a boy raised among warriors and merchants, taught discipline and leadership. Yet Demise's curse, timeless, relentless, found in him the perfect vessel, not because he was wicked, but because the cycle demanded balance. Ganondorf became the convergence point of power, an anchor for malice, a storm wearing a human face. In Gerudo culture, he remained their rightful king. In Hyrule's cosmic design, he became an inevitable catastrophe. The Sheikah, guardians of secrets and time. Where the Gerudos stand proudly in the sun, the Sheikah live in the shadows, quiet, watchful, and ancient. Once the royal family's closest allies, they are the keepers of sacred technology, so advanced it feels almost supernatural. Shrines that test the soul, towers that pierce the sky, guardians that walk with mechanical grace, warp gates woven from shimmering runes. Their symbol, the ever-watching eye, is said to peer through time itself, yet their loyalty is a quiet one. The Sheikah rarely step into the spotlight. Their work is subtle, precise, and often invisible, the kind of protection meant to be felt but not seen. They preserve histories others forget, maintain systems others cannot understand, and carry out duties others would never dare attempt. They are the silent foundation beneath Hyrule's throne, the Zonai, ghosts of a forgotten age. Before even the Sheikah, before the earliest chronicles of Hylians, there were the Zonai. Their ruins scatter the deep forests and high cliffs, monolithic stone blocks etched with spirals, dragon motifs, and energy channels that glow faintly when touched by moonlight. Scholars call them barbaric, yet their structures suggest mathematical brilliance and a mastery of ancient magic. The Zonai wielded secret stones, artifacts capable of enhancing the very essence of a being. Their power was so immense that legends cast them as demigods, and though they vanished long before the modern era, their legacy survived through a single union. Zonai royalty intermarrying with Hellions to establish Hyrule's first true kingdom. Even in absence, their presence lingers, in every ancient ruin, in every forgotten cavern, in the silent hum beneath Hyrule's oldest temples. If the Hylians, Gerudo, and Sheikah form the political and spiritual skeleton of Hyrule, then the other races, Zora, Rito, Goron, and Kokiri, are its living organs. They nourish the world in ways subtle yet profound, shaping its ecosystems, its myths, and its rhythms. Each tribe represents a different force of nature, a different philosophy of life, and a different truth about what it means to exist in a land caught between creation and calamity. The Zora, the memory of water. Step into the Zora domain, and you enter a world sculpted by water's grace. Their cities shimmer with translucent blue stone that seems to ripple like the surface of a calm lake. Water flows through every corridor, down every staircase, and beneath every bridge. To the Zora, water is more than a resource. It is time itself, fluid, unbroken, and ever-flowing toward new forms. Their longevity, 3 to 5 centuries, gives them a perspective few others can grasp. A conversation with a Zora elder is like speaking to a historian who witnessed the rise and fall of multiple eras. Their culture reflects this sense of continuity, ceremonial armor, aquatic dances, and the gentle, patient art of watercraft. They guard Hyrule's rivers and lakes with quiet reverence, knowing that if water falters, the kingdom withers. The Rito, the wings of adaptation, far above the lakes and forests, perched on windy peaks, the Rito live in harmony with the sky. They did not begin that way. Long ago, during the great flood of the adult timeline, the Zora were forced to evolve not toward the depths, but away from them. Their bodies changed. Their fins became wings. They left behind the water that once defined them and embraced the freedom of air. Rito Village spirals around a stone spire like a great wooden instrument, each home shaped to channel wind into soft melodies. Music, travel, and storytelling bind their culture together. They are wanderers, scouts, messengers, those who trust the sky even when storms gather. Their existence is a reminder that survival sometimes requires letting go of one's past and welcoming a future shaped by necessity, not preference. The Goron, the strength of stone. On the blistering slopes of Death Mountain, the Goron thrive in places no other beings could survive. Their bodies are carved from rock, resilient and warm, capable of withstanding flames and molten rivers. The Gorons mine, forge, and construct by carving into the mountain itself, treating the earth not as an obstacle, but as a partner. Their society is built around brotherhood, an unbreakable bond that transcends blood. To be welcomed by a Goron is to be called brother, a term that carries weight, loyalty, and deep affection. Though they are warriors by nature, their hearts are gentle. Conflicts are not solved through conquest, but through honor, strength, and mutual respect. They are the heartbeat of Hyrule's mountains, a rhythm steady and dependable. The Kokiri and Korok, the breath of the forest. In the sheltered woods, under the great Deku tree, live the Kokiri, eternal children, untouched by time. Their innocence is not naivety, but purity, a life lived without malice or ambition. After the great flood, they evolved into the Korok, small wooden spirits with leaf-like faces, drifting gently through the trees like fragments of a dream. They represent nature's cycle, growth, decay, renewal. They plant seeds, nurture forests, and ensure that life continues even when kingdoms fall. In their quiet simplicity, they embody Hyrule at its most primal and peaceful, reminding us that not all existence is defined by conflict. To understand the way Hyrule breathes, you must step beyond the land, beyond the kingdoms, beyond even time itself, and look toward the laws that shape the very structure of reality. These laws were not written in books, nor spoken by sages. They were laid down in silence by the three divine creators, Din, Nehru, and Faror, at the moment the universe first opened its eyes. And at the center of their design rests an artifact unlike any other, the Triforce. The Triforce is not a weapon. It was never meant to be swung, cast, or commanded. It is the source code of existence, three golden intentions crystallized into form. Each piece represents one of the essential forces that govern not only Hyrule, but the nature of all beings who inhabit it. Power, shaped by Din, is the primal spark of existence, the will to survive, the urge to build, the strength to reshape the world through sheer determination, It is the force that ignites stars and moves mountains. Wisdom, given by Nehru, is the ability to perceive truth, to interpret fate, and to impose order on chaos. Wisdom does not simply know, it understands. And courage, born from Faror, is the resilience of the soul, the quiet, steady flame that refuses to yield, even in the shadow of despair. These three forces must coexist. When balanced, they create a stable world where divinity and mortality stand in harmony. But when one grows too strong or falls into hands clouded by desire, the balance shatters and the ripple spreads across time. Yet the Triforce obeys a deeper rule. It chooses, if someone touches it without embodying all three virtues equally, the Triforce fractures, scattering its pieces across the world. Each fragment seeks the heart that mirrors its nature most closely. Thus, destiny forms itself around three individuals: Ganondorf, who carries power not only in strength but in ambition, the restless desire to control and reshape the world; Zelda, born into wisdom, inheriting Hylia's insight and the ability to see beyond the present moment; Link, the bearer of courage, who rises without title or prophecy written in blood, answering fate not because he must, but because someone must. This self-selection is not a flaw. It is a safeguard, preventing absolute power from falling into the hands of one being alone. The universe knows that the three virtues must remain separate in order to remain whole. Whenever one piece awakens, the others stir. If power stirs, as it often does through Ganondorf's rise, wisdom must awaken to counterbalance it, and courage, the silent force, must answer the call. This creates a domino effect, an endless cycle of reincarnation, resistance, and renewal. None of the three can step away from their role. None can refuse their call. These roles are not chosen by fate. They are woven into the framework of reality at birth. This cyclical awakening is the heartbeat of Hyrule. It is why eras repeat, why heroes return, why Zelda's light never goes out, and why, no matter how many times darkness rises, a single spark of courage always rises to meet it. The balance is not perfect. It was never meant to be, but it is enough to keep the world turning, again and again. To understand why Hyrule is trapped in an endless loop of tragedy and rebirth, you must return to the moment before the first story even began, the moment when Demise, the primordial demon, met his final defeat. As he fell, fading from the world he sought to conquer, he did not scream or plead. Instead, he spoke a quiet promise, a vow made not to the hero who struck him down, but to the future itself. "My hatred will never perish," he said. "It will be reborn in those who carry my spirit and in those who stand against it." That curse was not aimed at Zelda or Link by name. It was cast over all who shared Hylia's blood, and all who carried the spark of heroism that Faror first breathed into the world. It was a blanket curse, broad, relentless, eternal, a seed planted in reality's foundation, destined to sprout again and again in every era. The curse of Demise is not an emotion. It is a force, a gravitational pull that bends history toward conflict, no matter how peaceful a century may seem. Its physical manifestation is malice, a writhing, corrosive energy that behaves like hatred given form. Malice does not merely corrupt, it consumes, it seeps through stone, infects the soil, and crawls through ancient ruins like blood returning to an old wound. With enough strength, Malice can rebuild bodies long since turned to dust, repairing flesh and bone not through life, but through pure spite. It is the reason Ganondorf rises again and again, even when his defeat seems absolute. Malice remembers. Malice persists. Ganondorf, in many ways, is not the architect of his own darkness. He is the vessel chosen by the curse. The Gerudo tradition, birthing one male every 100 years, creates the perfect opening for Demise's spirit to anchor itself. And so, each time the cycle turns, the curse seeks that single child, not because of prophecy, not because of choice, but because the mechanics of fate demand equilibrium. If a king must be born, the curse will claim him. Ganondorf's tragedy is that he begins as a prince expected to rule his people with honor. But the curse twists him, amplifies his ambition, infects his restlessness, and transforms him into the carrier of power, raw, unfiltered, and catastrophic. His existence forces the Triforce pieces to awaken. Power stirs first, and the universe reacts. Zelda, bearing wisdom, awakens as the counterbalance. She inherits Hylia's will to protect, to seal, to restore, and Link, born from humble origins, awakens courage, the unbroken spirit that meets hatred without fear. These awakenings are not coincidences, nor blessings, nor burdens chosen freely. They are the cosmic response to the curse. When power rises, wisdom and courage must rise with it. When Ganondorf returns, Zelda and Link must return. The three are bound together, not by story, but by structure. In this way, Demise's curse becomes the engine of Hyrule's age-long cycle. Heroes fall and rise, kingdoms collapse and rebuild, darkness spreads and is pushed back, and each time the world breathes again, scarred but still standing. It is a cycle that no blade has ever cut, no kingdom has ever outrun, and no prayer has ever fully undone. A cycle written not on scrolls or stone tablets, but in the very heartbeat of Hyrule itself. To understand why Hyrule's history feels vast, contradictory, and endlessly recursive, you must step into the moment where time itself broke, not with an explosion, nor a divine decree, but with a silent shift when one boy moved between two eras and returned forever changed. Ocarina of Time is spoken of as an adventure, but in truth it is a fault line, a fracture where destiny split into three distinct realities. Before Link touched the Master Sword, Hyrule's timeline flowed like a single river, moving steadily from its ancient origins toward an uncertain future. But by traveling between youth and adulthood, shifting the state of the world simply by existing in two different ages, Link disrupted the linearity that held time together. The world had to decide which version of events was real, and in failing to choose, it created all of them. The downfall timeline, where the hero falls. In one possibility, Link fails, whether through death, absence, or an irreversible twist of fate. Ganondorf triumphs. With the hero gone, the balance between power, wisdom, and courage collapses. The sacred realm warps into the dark world, dripping with malice like ink spreading through clean water. Hyrule becomes a graveyard of abandoned temples, corrupted landscapes, and fading gods. Here, the world does not recover. It endures. Every stone feels heavy, as if remembering what it once prayed for and never received. The child timeline, where the warning changes everything. In another branch, Link is sent back to his childhood, Armed with knowledge of the future, he and Zelda stop Ganondorf before his ambitions take root. He is arrested, judged, and cast into the Twilight Realm, his rebellion crushed before it begins. This version of Hyrule leans toward order. It becomes a kingdom of rituals, seals, and strict political structures. Yet the shadows leak through. The Twilight Realm emerges, not as an enemy, but as a parallel truth, a reminder that prevention does not erase darkness, it only displaces it. The adult timeline, where the world drowns. And in the timeline, Link leaves behind the future he saved is suddenly without a hero. When Ganondorf returns, no one stands to oppose him. The goddesses intervene directly, flooding Hyrule to save it from a fate worse than destruction. The Great Sea rises, swallowing fields, forests, and cities until only mountaintops remain as islands. Civilization survives in scattered clusters, and the Rito evolve from the Zora, no longer creatures of water, but children of the wind. This is a Hyrule that chooses rebirth over resistance. 3 timelines, 1 myth. Though these timelines diverge wildly, they share a single truth. Hyrule remembers, even centuries later, in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, traces of all 3 histories linger, like overlapping dreams that blur together when morning comes. Scholars suggest that the timelines grew so distant, so stretched, that they eventually bent back toward one another, merging into a single continuity where legends have become layered memories. The possibility of an ending. In Tears of the Kingdom, something unprecedented occurs. Ganondorf's draconification, his transformation into a mindless force, destroys the vessel that carried Demise's hatred. And when the secret stone shatters, the tether between Malice and a mortal host finally breaks. For the first time, the cycle may stop. The loop of power, wisdom, and courage, reincarnating endlessly to combat an ancient curse, might finally rest. History, once fractured into 3, now holds its breath at the possibility of a true ending or a new beginning. Take a slow, steady breath and imagine yourself stepping into the heart of Hyrule's oldest memory. You are standing inside the Temple of Time, a sanctuary where the past is not gone and the future has not yet begun. Light pours down through the vaulted ceiling in thin, shimmering strands, like threads of ancient memory suspended in the air. Each ray moves softly, carrying the warmth of moments long forgotten. The floor beneath you is cool stone, worn smooth by generations of footsteps, yet it feels familiar, as though you have walked here before in another life, in another age. Hold your breath for a moment. Now, inhale deeply. Let the quiet of this place settle into your lungs. Feel the air grow still around you, heavy with the presence of timelines overlapping like translucent layers. The temple does not exist in one era. It exists in all of them, linked by the echo of the Master Sword, by the footsteps of heroes, by the prayers of sages whose voices have never fully faded. As you breathe in, imagine drawing those echoes toward you. They do not overwhelm. They surround you gently, like water closing around a drifting leaf. In this pause, feel the world's heartbeat align with your own. Not loud, not forceful, just a soft rhythmic pulse moving through the stone, through the air, through your chest. This is the pulse of creation, the resonance of Din, Nehru, and Pharaoh woven into the bones of the land. Listen closely, and you may sense the crossing of timelines, three branching rivers of possibility converging for a brief instant. In that stillness, you may feel the presence of countless souls, heroes awakening, princesses remembering, adversaries rising, each one a fragment of a story that has repeated for ages, yet never in the same way twice. Let the weight of these histories rest lightly on you. They are invitations to understand the world, not as a sequence, but as a cycle, one that breathes with you, through you. And now, exhale. They are not burdens. Here, the distinctions between eras fade, the boundaries between light and shadow blur, and the loops of fate, those endless spirals of rebirth, begin to feel less like chains and more like the natural rhythm of a world finding its balance again and again. Let your breath drift out slowly, releasing your hold on the moment. As you do, imagine the walls of the temple dissolving into soft mist. The past loosens its grip. The future stops pressing forward. You are left in a gentle in-between, a space where Hyrule's many lives fold into one serene whole. With each breath out, let yourself melt further into this place. Let go of the timelines. Let go of the battles and victories and losses. Let go of the need to understand everything at once. Take a slow, steady breath and imagine yourself stepping into the heart of Hyrule's oldest memory. You are standing inside the Temple of Time, a sanctuary where the past is not gone and the future has not yet begun. Light pours down through the vaulted ceiling in thin, shimmering strands, like threads of ancient memory suspended in the air. Each ray moves softly, carrying the warmth of moments long forgotten. The floor beneath you is cool stone, worn smooth by generations of footsteps, yet it feels familiar, as though you have walked here before, in another life, in another age. Now, inhale deeply. Let the quiet of this place settle into your lungs. Feel the air grow still around you, heavy with the presence of timelines overlapping like translucent layers. The temple does not exist in one era. It exists in all of them, linked by the echo of the Master Sword, by the footsteps of heroes, by the prayers of sages whose voices have never fully faded. As you breathe in, imagine drawing those echoes toward you. They do not overwhelm. They surround you gently, like water closing around a drifting leaf. Hold your breath for a moment. In this pause, feel the world's heartbeat align with your own. Not loud, not forceful, just a soft rhythmic pulse moving through the stone, through the air, through your chest. This is the pulse of creation, the resonance of Din, Nehru, and Pharaoh woven into the bones of the land. Listen closely, and you may sense the crossing of timelines, three branching rivers of possibility converging for a brief instant. In that stillness, you may feel the presence of countless souls, heroes awakening, princesses remembering, adversaries rising, each one a fragment of a story that has repeated for ages, yet never in the same way twice. Let the weight of these histories rest lightly on you. They are not burdens. They are invitations to understand the world, not as a sequence, but as a cycle, one that breathes with you, through you. And now, exhale. Let your breath drift out slowly, releasing your hold on the moment. As you do, imagine the walls of the temple dissolving into soft mist. The past loosens its grip. The future stops pressing forward. You are left in a gentle in-between, a space where Hyrule's many lives fold into one serene whole. Here, the distinctions between eras fade, The boundaries between light and shadow blur, and the loops of fate, those endless spirals of rebirth, begin to feel less like chains and more like the natural rhythm of a world, finding its balance again and again. With each breath out, let yourself melt further into this place. Let go of the timelines. Let go of the battles and victories and losses. Let go of the need to understand everything at once. Just breathe with Hyrule. Allow the land to cradle you, its forests, its deserts, its mountains, its skies, welcoming you into its quiet, ancient dream. Here, in this soft twilight between past and future, you are safe, you are held, you belong. And when you are ready, let the last of your breath flow free, as if dissolving into the world itself, a world where yesterday and tomorrow are not separate things, but two gentle faces of the same eternal cycle.
Hyrule has never been a cursed world. It is a reminder of the balance all beings carry within themselves, the pull of ambition, the clarity of wisdom, and the quiet strength of courage. No one truly escapes destiny, but everyone can choose how they stand before it. Thank you for wandering with me through the folded layers of Hyrule's history. It is only Hyrule whispering that the story continues somewhere in another timeline.